And raped for 9 months. Abbey Hernandez was snatched 5 years ago as she walked home from school in the US state of New Hampshire, where she's been speaking about it publicly for the very first time.
He said, I'm thinking of finding something a little more humane for you to keep you quiet. He said, I'm thinking of a shock collar. They're like dogs wear.
A shock collar?
I remember he put it on me and he told me, okay, try and scream. And I just slowly started to raise my voice, and then it shocked me. So he's like, okay, now you know what it feels like.
Well, joining me now from Manchester is Dr. David Holmes, a psychologist at the Met University. He specifies in the understanding of Stockholm Syndrome. Very good afternoon to you. First of all, it's an absolutely horrific story, and one of the worst, that we've heard of, really, isn't it?
I wouldn't say it was possibly the worst. There have been far more protracted occasions. This only lasted 9 months, and when I say only, 48 hours under this circumstance can have a massive impact on an individual, and, is quite horrific. It's the continued nature of the threat that makes it particularly horrific.
And I suppose for someone going through that and enduring it, 9 months is a long time. There have been people who've been in captivity for much longer. How mentally do you deal with that? I guess everyone is different.
There are differences between people, but there is a kind of evolutionary precedent which can even be seen in animals that are captive, in that one way of dealing with it, and if this threat is kind of life-threatening and continuous and it's totally overpowering, in other words, you've got no chance of any escape that you can see of, then what you do is you kind of join the captor. They call it identification with the aggressor. You identify with them. In other words, you're kind of joining them. So you have someone who threatens you totally. And one way out of that is to become, if you like, part of them, one of them, a friend of them, to interact with them. So that you are no longer frightened because you're kind of on the same side. This is what kind of drives it, and it applies in many, many situations. The rise of the Third Reich, cults, many situations of sex abuse, etc. This kind of situation, which we kind of call Stockholm Syndrome, is something whereby it gives you a chance of survival. It's a means of surviving the impossible, if you like, by doing that.
And am I right in saying, I've read a lot of, I think you've gone a bit dark, but we'll carry on speaking to you. Am I right in saying I've read a number of books from people who've been affected by this, and sometimes people get this kind of loyalty to their abductors, and even if, many years down the line they're taken out for day trips, they don't feel they can speak up because they've grown attached to them in a way.
Yes. Sometimes, after the event, after release, or after they've escaped, they will often still defend their captor. They will sometimes actually not take part in the prosecution of a captor. And on many occasions, there may be even some kind of lingering affection for the captor. Needless to say, when it's been over this period of time where you've been trying to sort of appease the captor, these kind of feelings become evident. It's very difficult to sort of understand when you've not been in that position. However, it has even been applied to the majority of marriages where females have said the only reason that they were with their present partner was because they couldn't be bothered protesting anymore, and kind of capitulated and became one and bonded with them. So it can be seen, evidenced in many occasions in life. It's very difficult to actually comprehend going through that when you're under that kind of threat, wearing a shock collar, under threat of being incinerated in a horrific can.
And I suppose the Joseph Fritzl case comes to mind because that was, absolutely everywhere. It made headlines all around the world. And when these people are found and then they are introduced to society, that must be really difficult because, of course, sometimes the people who have been abducted have then given birth to the children of their abductors.
Yes. And this is completely bonding. Over time, their reality has become that of the captive. They have missed out on sometimes many, many years of normal life, of normal integration with other people. And often they find it very difficult to actually interact with other people under normal circumstances. And they will sometimes think that they felt safer with their captor purely and simply because that became the norm for them, that became their reality. And to rely on that person for every morsel of food and drop of water over many, many years can be very, very bonding and possibly far more bonding than, say, you know, a fairly casual relationship that was more romantic.
OK, Dr. David Holmes, and you're very active, Dimmer Switch. We'll leave it there. Thank you ever so much for your thoughts.
OK, thank you.
Donald Trump's former advisor, George Papadopoulos, has been sentenced to 14